Hi everybody, this is Greg with Nanobot Rock. Thanks for tuning in and listening. Clay and I will be discussing local and independent music from around the world. This is Nanobot Rock Mixtape.
So how's it going, Greg?
Quarantine for me, day 3. I know that a lot of people might not like that, but I'm holed up at home and hanging out inside, trying to get out in the yard and enjoy what little spring we have thus far. How about you?
About the same. Our quarantine is a little bit nicer because we at least have somewhat of a multi-room house that we can all kind of separate if we need to, and then take the dog on walks here and there and practice my social distancing with people. You know, I give them wide berths on the sidewalk, and everyone at least seems to be polite about it and wave, as opposed to going, "Why is that jerk going all the way over there?"
Oh no, I'm going to cross the street, someone who doesn't look like me. So you're not keeping
But I got to tell you.
Go.
No, you talk. No, you talk.
Well, you're talking about giving birth on
What
the
I was
sidewalk
gonna say
and social distancing from dogs, so go ahead.
Yes, that is exactly what I'm talking about. Giving birth on the sidewalk. Oh man. Okay. No, what I was going to say is this has been great for the introvert in me because I get to just completely go to the other side of the street and people think it's okay. I get to get my DoorDash delivered and I get to tell them just leave it on the doorstep. I am not going to come out and talk to you. So I'm actually enjoying a little bit of this self-quarantining time. It's more like just real life where I get to be more introverted.
And I'm just picturing you standing at a window going, "Leave it on the doorstep, I'm not going to come talk to you." Screaming at them, and they're out there going,
Here's a picture.
Sorry.
Here's a picture of my steps. I said to leave it there.
"Sir, here's your Wendy's you ordered."
No,
Sorry.
you do no. Keep your knuckles away from my door.
Do not touch the handle. Lysol. For those who don't know, I am in the Boise area, and you are in the Houston area. So when we say here and there, we are very far apart in this large country that we have.
Yep.
But it is spring here, so
Our friendship knows no boundaries.
Knows no boundaries or borders. The imaginary lines on a map do not hold us back.
Yep.
For that matter, little holds us back, but that's all right.
Skype keeping friends together since whenever Skype was invented.
Since 1980. I don't know when Skype was invented either. That's all right. So have you done anything fun and exciting with all of your time down there, aside from walking the dog and wide berths on sidewalks?
Video games. Lots of video games. So before I met my wife, she was big into World of Warcraft. So we pulled it up on the computer and signed up for some World of Warcraft Classic. So we're rocking it like it's 2004 right now.
Wow. See what I did there?
Collecting pine cones as dark elves.
Collecting pine cones. See, if it wasn't for quarantine, I would imagine you running around your neighborhood with that idea of collecting pine cones as dark elves, and it gives me a much more entertaining image of what you're actually doing. I am doing the same,
that's
though.
You are collecting pine cones?
No, I'm not collecting
and
pine
giving
cones.
birth on the streets?
Birth on the streets and pine cones and social pine cone distancing. I am been playing some video games, brushing up on some reading, listening to an exorbitant amount of music, but also trying to just get out, go for little drives here and there, get some sunshine, things like that. Acknowledge the world still exists for the time being, and hopefully this will all blow over soon and we'll be back to some sense of normalcy.
Yeah. We are all hoping to get back to normal. I think that's why we're all doing this, so that we can just be done with this and stop the spread of the craziness and move on. Though I think we're going to be looking at a little bit of a new normal way of life when some of this comes out. Like, I think you're going to see a lot more companies that allow work from home. You're going to see more online delivered items and less store fixtures and things like that. It's going to be pretty crazy. And I know that we don't normally like to talk about what's going on in the world, since that kind of it makes the podcast a little less evergreen. But I kind of feel like this is a big enough event that we're going to be talking about this for a while.
It is, and people will have enough toilet paper stockpiled for the year 2040. They'll still be using the pile that they have in their laundry room or under their sink.
Or we'll finally move to the way of Europe and start using bidets.
Bidets. There is actually a lot more to do at home, as I think we've both figured out over the last couple weeks. One thing that I've started to also take accustomed to is a lot of musicians are having at-home concerts. They're doing like living room concerts and they're streaming them live. And there have been a lot of really good shows out there. Even it doesn't matter how big or small the musician is. I think that there are a lot out there that really fits whatever anybody's into. Some musicians I've seen that they were doing, you could get a ticket to their virtual show, if you will, for $10. You could watch their stream. Some of them are doing nightly things. There's some musicians here in the Boise area that are doing nightly shows and things like that, that you could just stream on your phone, on your laptop, on your smart television, whatever it be. You can jump into it and check it out. There's a lot of stuff that you could do while being at home. Do you think that this may become an alternate way for shows to occur, that they might just start doing them online and streaming them?
Yeah, I mean, I think so, but I think that the way that artists kind of get their energy is from live crowds, so they're going to have to come up with some way of being able to feel fulfilled from the reactions from the people who are coming in, more than just like somebody giving it a heart tap on their phone. So I don't think that this will be the new, like, what takes the place of concerts, but I could see a lot of bands starting to do like almost like a version of the Tiny Desk concert from their own studio more often, and it may be a new way for them to kind of, like you said, monetize some of their performances. Like, I mean, I think there are some artists that were even charging $1 for their show, and it's an opportunity to see some of your favorite artists do what they love and throw them $1 their way.
And I've seen that a lot of them have digital tip jars that they're doing as well.
Yep.
So you can watch it, and it's PayPal, Venmo, whatever it is that they're accepting or that they have access to. You can tip them there. So maybe it's a concept of, we're going to do a West Coast tour, and they do the California, Idaho, Washington, some stops in Montana, Utah, Nevada, whatever it may be. They do a West Coast tour, and then they could the next week jump to the East Coast without ever actually having to travel. They could end up doing an online portion of that, charge $5 a head for that with a tip jar, and then they sell their merch there and ship it off. Could be the way of the future.
Yeah, it could be. Although I worry about that impacting some of the smaller cities that, originally they may have said, I may go to a Boise, or I might go to a Santa Fe, New Mexico, but now it doesn't quite make as much sense monetarily to go to those towns and, I'll just throw out a free concert and try and get those people anyway. And so you could see that hurt the industry a little bit. But, I mean, that's just me speculating right there.
Well, there's the venue aspect of it, too. Here in town, we've got quite a few venues, some amazing people, guys who run the soundboard and gals who run the soundboard, the staff at the venues themselves, the locations. I mean, there's a whole live sense that is to be had when you go to a concert. It's not just watching it in your own headphones, and someone's listening on $12 headphones, someone's listening on $1,200 headphones, so they get a different experience, sort of thing. When you're live in a venue, you all collectively share in the same sentiment, unless you're old like we are and our hearing's going anyway, so then it's just kind of loud. I'm just kidding. But
yeah,
the venues, you got to think about that as well.
Yeah, well, and some of the opportunities are, touring is so that people in a city that may not know you, you may develop fans in that city. So do you lose out on expanding your presence across the country if you're not going to some of these cities as well? So what other means can you use to kind of get your name out there? And I thought another really cool thing that somebody is doing is the website Bandcamp. So that's bandcamp.com. Last Friday, which would have been just to really timestamp this thing, that would have been the Friday the 20th of March. Bandcamp had, which usually kind of helps bands publish their music online and sell it for anywhere from $5 to $10 to even like a name your own price type of thing, allows, and they take their cut from helping publish and distribute the music digitally. They waived all of their fees for the band, so anybody who bought a band or bought an album from their favorite band during that time, all the proceeds were going to the bands. So they were doing a really cool thing to help bands out during this time.
And to that point, something I did want to point out as well is, I'm not going to name names here, but there was one artist that I know of woke up Saturday morning to $200 in their PayPal account because people went out and bought their album, and 100% of that went to that artist. And that was something really, really cool to see, because people are out there, they're supporting it. Even in a time when we're all quarantined and stuck inside, there's still a way to support the artist and do all that. Another thing I wanted to touch on with that as well is, maybe it's going to make a few people that aren't here jealous is a new word that I'm going to use. Jealous. The Record Exchange here in Boise, my favorite record shop that I have here in town, they are offering delivery within the county. So if you spend $25 or more for the time being, while they have closed their doors and you can't go into the record store and dive into the bins, they are offering delivery, they're offering curbside, they're offering to mail out records to you. So I placed an order and I'm waiting for them to come to my door and give me my music. So selfishly happy about that.
Yeah, that's a great point for anyone who's even not in Boise. Is like, if you're looking for new music and you want to support bands, I mean, you can go onto Bandcamp, you can download the albums from there, but you can also just Google your local record company and see if they're doing the same thing that the Record Exchange is. And if they're not, ask them, and maybe they'll start thinking about doing it. It's always a good way to get out there and get new material to listen to. Yeah,
call your local venues. If you really want to support and you want to help out, call your venues, call your local record shops, talk to them. Just ask them how they're holding up, what you could do to order your music, what you would normally do on a weekend you can't do in person, or maybe on a weekday or whatever, and maybe you can't do it in person. Go figure out a way to support them otherwise. There's lots of ways to do that, and I'm actually getting a lot of music that I would normally find by diving into the bins on the weekend. I'm starting to find that I'm ordering it online now. I'm a big physical medium kind of person. I love to have the album or the record in my hands. Love to look at the artwork. Love to sit down, play it, and hold it and read the lyrics, read the acknowledgments, the producers, all of those names and all that information that helped to go into this album. Really, to me, is a whole experience. So I really like that. I'm going to still stay with the physical medium myself. So if you want to do digital, Bandcamp for sure. If you want to do physical, you can also get that on Bandcamp, because you can order it, and some artists will sell it that way through the physical mediums. But call your record store. Give it a shot.
Yeah, least they could do is tell you, stop calling me.
I have been asked to place all my Record Exchange orders online. So, just kidding. Record Exchange is an amazing place with an amazing staff, and I absolutely love them. They're a huge part of Treefort, which we talked about in the last episode as well. They're a huge part of the city. They've been around for decades, and phenomenal selection of music. And they've actually, and I guess we need to point this out since we're doing this in a podcast, they are not a sponsor. This is just me completely fanboying over their existence, but they've been around for decades, and they've got a massive selection. They keep adding rows and rows and rows of records, and they do live in-store performances that are a lot of fun to go to as well. Most of them are free, so another way to support the music, which I don't know if World of Warcraft allows you to support music on World of Warcraft. I don't know. I haven't played World of Warcraft.
Well, I'm sure I could go on the chat and just tell people to support their bands, and then they would say, get back to questing.
Well, I don't know. If somebody's got a microphone and like a bluegrass band, if they want to do like a hardcore bluegrass Ace of Spades cover while you guys are running in on a dungeon, that would make a pretty sweet soundtrack.
It would. And there are plenty of people on there that, use Discord to chat with each other, and I'll get an idea out there right after this to see if anybody wants to do a bluegrass cover of Ace of Spades.
I completely believe you will. Something between Lemmy and Leroy Jenkins. Just go get them. Yell it.
Lemmy Jenkins got
Lemmy Jenkins.
All right. So with that, Craig, do you want to take us into our next band on our spring mixtape?
Now's as good a time as any to talk about Lemmy Jenkins. No, I'm kidding.
That's right.
We're going to talk about I Fight Fail from Canton, Ohio, and their new single, All I Am. The trio from Canton mixes this alt-rock sound that leans heavily, I found, on the synthesized rock sound, kind of a post-Linkin Park duo vocal pairing that happens there. That's the subtle to the almost screamy balance between the two as the song progresses.
Okay, yeah, I was going to ask a question there because you were saying dual vocal, and I don't remember there being anyone other than Andy Potter singing, so I was a little confused of where that direction was going. But I can see what you mean about the range between
the range and the duo of the sounds and the range and the vocals. I mean, they do give credit to Daryl Johnson, guitarist, for the vocals as well. So they may be so similar that it does come in to play there. Maybe he's just doing the harmony or background vocals as well. But the range of the duality of the vocals, I should say, is the range that he peaks into and plays subtly, that was made so famous by Linkin Park, is really what I was trying to point out with that. Yeah.
So that actually makes me ask a question. So when I was looking at the band's bio and everything, they kind of list themselves as a post-hardcore band, but you can really tell that there's a lot of that, like, I mean, you alluded to it with the Linkin Park reference, but the early 2000s kind of emo sound. What do you think the demarcation is between emo and post-hardcore or post-core?
The amount of hugs they were given as children? No.
Oh, is that it?
That's hard because it has bled into one another over time. To your point, the early 2000s, as you mentioned, this sound was more of, at the time, what would have been considered the evolution of an alt rock sound, because people didn't really know how to really fit it. It didn't fit in any one particular category. As music does, it evolves and it grows, and we get different genres and things like that. And I've never been a huge fan of breaking down genres and saying that something is hardcore, metalcore, thrashcore, and just going down that rabbit hole, not wormhole this time. Notice how I chose the right sentiment there. But I've never been a huge fan of breaking it down to those many levels. But this, at the time, would have been an alt rock. The emo, to me, gets more vocal heavy in the overall sense, and it's compared to, that's tough because the line is blurred, and now I'm stumbling on my thoughts with that one. It's because it is blurred, and when I think emo rock, I think of early Killers was kind of in that, My Chemical Romance, that kind of sound, that really profound vocal swings that they would do, and we get that here, but it pairs to that heavy synth rock sound in a way that, to me, gets more rock genre than the emo.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of got some of that. I mean, it's got a rich sound. Like when I heard that this was just a trio, it sounds like there's so much more going on than just guitars, bass, and drums, and then Andy on the vocals. But you can really tell that the vocals, as much as, you know, they're kind of the center of the story, of whether you're talking about the story of All I Am, about, you know, just kind of losing the memory of dreams or of things that you had in your past, but most of those vocals really do seem kind of like they're buried more in the mix, and you've got a lot more of like the drums in the forefront, and there's that rock edge to it that comes along with the mix.
So how would you delineate the two in this sense?
Oh, I don't know, because the first time I listened to this song, I thought, somebody's still releasing emo in 2020, and then the more I kind of listened to it, you know, I was like, okay, I'm getting more of that kind of post-core feel. You know, I'm blanking on some of the post-core bands that I would have associated them with, but, you know, you've kind of got I'm trying to be in touch with my feelings and think about, like, the line, "We're not awake until we wake up," you know, kind of was just like, okay, that's an emo line. But then the more that the music kind of got into it, I'm like, okay, this is broader than that category. So I applaud these guys for really kind of evolving the sound and, you know, making something that's all their own.
And to me, I think the line, especially with this sound, that differentiates what they're going with than what we've known for the emo sound is that it doesn't build together, it builds on itself. It doesn't feel like it's all meant to be one giant upswing that just ebbs and flows together. It really feels like it's almost organically building upon itself and on itself and on itself. The sound becomes bigger and larger with both vocally and instrumentally. It just continues to build on top of itself as opposed to in one big wave. And I think that to me is what really differentiates the two. And that's the difference between the emo. The emo really feels like we're going to go through this grand swing of sound that's going to build and it's going to come down together. And this one just really kind of continues to build up. It's a tower as opposed to a road.
No, I agree. They're definitely, like, the more you listen to it, they just continue to kind of stack layers on top of itself. And it just kind of ramps up to kind of this big ending that just kind of then drops off at the end, which in this case it works really well with the whole theme of, like, you have these amazing dreams or whatever that you're having and you just don't want it to end, but at the end point it's just you snap and you wake up and now I've forgotten everything and it's over. And
with All I Am and I Fight Fail, it is a very familiar sound. Again, kind of how my mind went to that Linkin Park duality of the vocals, the subtle to the screamy build-up kind of sound. But through it all, it's kind of that guilty pleasure rock sound because of how well it's constructed upon itself to me. It is. You wake up from it, and you know that there's part of you going, well, I feel like we've done this, but at the same time I'm going, but it's really good over here. This is a really good song.
The guilty pleasure things is funny because as I was listening to this track before we started to just kind of keep it fresh in my mind, the chorus kicked in and, like, for the first time, like, it's just I caught myself subconsciously just singing along with it. I'm like, oh, I'm here now. This is now the song has gotten itself into my DNA. There's no getting it out now.
It's a part of me now. It is all I am. See what I did there? Oh.
You brought it full circle.
Full circle. So All I Am, I Fight Fail from Canton, Ohio. And to your point as well, this is a trio. It blew my mind because when I was first listening to this, I heard the song before I really dove into I Fight Fail much at all. And I really believed this was at least a 5+ piece. It's a big sound. And for Andy Potter, who you mentioned, Daryl Johnson on guitar, got to send some love to Anthony Carter on drums. For a trio to create this sound is quite impressive. And there's a lot to this. And I would encourage everybody to spend some time with it, even if you feel that it's familiar or, oh gosh, here we go again, we're going to go into this. Check it out, listen to it, give it a couple spins. I think you'll really like it.
I agree. So go take a listen to All I Am by I Fight Fail.
So in January of this year, I went to, speaking of local venues, the Olympic, and I saw Reverend Horton Heat. And playing with Reverend Horton Heat was the Buttertones.
Oh, so you got to see these guys already.
I did, and then I put 2 and 2 together, and they've just released the single Jazzhound, and the Los Angeles, California the Buttertones from LA are live super impressive. They have a sax player. Who has a sax player anymore? Exactly.
2 of the bands that we listened to in the last mixtape, but
Don't tell anybody. They got to go back and listen to that one, or watch it.
Yeah, go back and listen to our mixtape, episode 1, to hear more from the saxophone.
Right, but there was a while back we had offered anybody who can come up with an awesome sax solo get some Nanobot rock stickers. I'm still waiting for that awesome sax solo on record to be submitted to us. I love the sax solos. It's kind of that vintage 80s, but without the Kenny Loggins hair. It's awesome. There's nothing wrong with Kenny Loggins' hair. He's all right. See what I did there?
Yeah, I see what you're doing there, but I am really curious now how you're going to get from Kenny Loggins back to the sound from Jazzhound.
because I'm just going to jump right to it and ignore Kenny Loggins
okay.
entirely. There's no segue. There's no easy way to do that. But if Kenny Loggins were punk, no, I'm not even going to stretch for that. That's all right. Jazzhound is kind of... What if, follow me here, Kenny Loggins...
Now hear me out.
...was with The Clash and Lemmy Jenkins... No, okay, we're not going to go there. Jazzhound by the Buttertones, it's as commanding off stage as they are on stage. But it's this punk assembly wrapped around the love child of Lou Reed and the National in a sound, I guess, is the way the Jazzhound would come across. Follow me here, just follow me.
Yeah, okay, I'm sticking with you. I'm waiting until we circle back to Kenny Loggins now.
It's got that echoing vocal vibrato that leans into this really sparse but poignant bass that is almost this beacon in emptiness that just keeps you on track. As you're drifting through some darkness, you'll hear the bass kick off, and you gravitate towards that. And the song floats through that emptiness toward that bass, and it comes across almost as only half the story. When I'm listening to it, I really feel like there's some noir video out there that accompanies this that just isn't seen yet, that it just feels like it's only half of what we would get.
Yeah, when I looked at the news, and there is a video that accompanies the song Jazzhound, and they talk about how Lynchian it is, and it's got go-go dancers and all of that. I'm like, you know what? I don't even need to see the video, because every time I play this song, like the video is playing in my head. Like I'm seeing some 60s style trip out video going on anytime this is playing, with like the green skinned go-go dancers in the background, like blurring in and out, and the old school devil face like panning in and out. Like there's a vision in my head whenever this is playing, and this song is just invokes that imagery all on its own, because it's got that that dark and gritty psychobilly thing going on. And like you said, there's this really, really great bass riff that is just tethering you to the whole thing.
And when you're gone, and in your mouth song is full, when you're gone, you'll see just what I mean. Take a stare, baby, take a stare. Oh, wind in your hair, embracing the air.
The first time I listened to the song, I'll be honest, I didn't know what to make of it. But then the more I listened to it, I was like, oh, okay. So this is the band that your really cool friend that has better musical taste than you is like, this is my new favorite band, so give it a listen. And you're like, all right, this isn't really my thing, but let me do it. And then it's like you mentioned their name before. It's like the first time you listen to The Clash or the English Beat, you're like, oh, there's a lot going on here, and you're like, I need to go get all of their music, because you can just tell like what this song is able to accomplish in just one track is like just encapsulates so much really great sound, from the surf rock to the psychobilly to the to some of those dark tones to just this over reverb vocals that are going on. And like you said, there's the sax going on in the background. Like they cover so much territory.
They do, and like Kenny Loggins, the English Beat, The Clash, see how I brought that all together? There we go.
Oh, look at
full
that.
Circle, you're welcome. It does the psychobilly, the Reverend Horton Heat as well. It makes sense why they were together. It is a sound that doesn't seem to exist regularly in today's world, in today's life. We don't see it or hear it much. And yet there's this draw to it that it's almost refreshing without being replicating, and it carries a heavy presence. But how do you see this sound sustaining? How would it be received by those who want to try and maybe take a chance but are kind of uncertain? And what are your thoughts on that?
I don't know, because I'll be honest, this isn't going to be for everyone. Reverend Horton Heat isn't for everyone. but I can see anybody who is into kind of that theme, who likes going to kind of those, dark and dingy lounge type clubs and kind of seeing this type of act really getting into this, or people who, grew up on some of those, like the early 80s punk, and these guys kind of are described as post-punk. So we've gone to post-hardcore to post-punk over to
the post office.
Over 2 tracks. Yeah. Now we can get into post-nanobot rock, but I don't know. To me, it's just like they're going to be a niche band. I mean, that's just kind of how this sound usually goes. Like I said, it's going to be your really cool friend who has great taste in music. They're going to love this band. But, like somebody who listens to, one of the top 40 stations, or, is kind of into, the current sound, is going to be like, this isn't for me.
Just to interject real quick, because you've used the word theme a few times, and to your point, it does carry a very specific theme. And it's almost as if, like you pointed out, it's not for everybody, but it is hope for those that are looking for a sound that fits them. It gives them that.
Yeah. So unless, unless surf rock or the kind of rockabilly sound makes its resurgence like it did 20 years ago, then, there'll be a home for this. But I would say, listen to this track, go see them live, kind of get to what Greg said about, their showmanship and all of that, and just kind of discover this band, because, they're absolutely worth your time.
Indeed. They're something to push you out of your comfort zone for a lot of people, and I think that Jazzhound by the Buttertones really encapsulates that. And there's so much more to these guys, and definitely worth a deep dive if you have an opportunity. But check out Jazzhound by the Buttertones, LA, California band, with a lot of talent, and they're super young, so hopefully we'll get a lot more out of them in the future as well. I'm a fan, and may not be for everybody, but go check them out for sure.
Yeah, and I gotta say, like, the fact that they put their last track of the entire album as their first single really shows you that they got a lot of guts when it comes around to, like, what you can expect from their album. That we're just like, you know what? We're kicking it off at the end.
Hey, we need a single? Yeah, just grab the last one. It works. Why not? I don't care. There you go. It all works together. Yeah, go check them out. Buttertones, Jazzhound. Now for a familiar face, sort of, or a was familiar face, 2 a.m. Orchestra. We, years ago, did a review of Working to Divide. This was in the early days of Nanobot. The now Auckland, New Zealand group has released Loveless, and the Loveless is off Trading Graves, which was released February 21st, 2020, so it's out.
So you brought up the fact that we had reviewed these guys before, and I gotta say, like, yeah, early days of Nanobot, so this was 6 years ago that we reviewed this album. And I gotta be completely honest, I was listening to this and I'm like, man, these guys are really good. I need to check these guys out. And then I started kind of flipping through their catalog. I'm like, well, that cover looks really familiar. And then I'm like, oh yeah, we covered these guys again, or we covered these guys way back when. So I had a little bit of selective amnesia when it came to a band that apparently I had reviewed very well. But I know I had a couple of kids in between that, so your brain kind of disappears during that time. But the thing that's funny about this track especially is it's almost like I have selective amnesia every time I listen to it, because anytime it comes on, I'm like, well, this is a great song. This is really nice. And then I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. This is 2 a.m. Orchestra again. And like, it's almost like every time I listen to it, I'm experiencing it for the first time. I don't know if you want to go with like a 51st Dates analogy, where it's just kind of like you wake up and you kind of had to be reminded of all of this great thing that you had experienced before. But that's kind of what it's like every time I hear this song.
To your point, though, you had mentioned how much you loved the Working to Divide years ago and how much you love this. I think that speaks volumes of their abilities over the years. They haven't really lost it. If anything, I think that they've compounded on that and come into their own. This song, though, we had talked earlier about how sounds kind of build in one giant wave, or if they build upon themselves in a sense. Loveless, to me, doesn't really build on itself. It kind of comes in the stratosphere and hangs out in the stratosphere, exists in the stratosphere, and you're just kind of standing down here looking up at it in awe, and it in its entirety lives up there. It's way up there, and it's beautiful to look at and experience, but it never comes down. It doesn't come down. It doesn't start out small and get big. It's huge. It's up there, and it stays up there.
Yeah, and it works. I mean, granted, the song is only about 2 minutes long, so it doesn't have to hold it for a long period of time, but it is able to keep that energy going the entire time. And like you said, it's a sound that's just up in the stratosphere. And when I put it on, it's just kind of that. It's the whole, like, this is what you want the soundtrack of your life to sound like. So if like you're listening to it, you're just like, yeah, this is great. This has got my mood way up, and I am just ready to take on the day.
It's textured, it's dreamy, but it's got this individualized sense of orchestral rock that nods to minimal, so it's not overly heavy to sit with and to experience. It's something, like you had said, you can listen to it and go, wow, that was great, come back to it later in the day and be like, oh, this song's great, oh wait, that's the same song, I still love it, and you keep going with it, and it's refreshing every time that you listen to it. And some of that may be the fact that it is about 2 minutes and 18 seconds long, but the drifting vocals on the wave of instrumental fresh air gives a hopefulness and an airiness about it that allows you to keep coming back to it without feeling overburdened by it or really tired of it in any way, at least for me.
Yeah, and the vocals, I will be fully honest, like, I can barely understand what he's saying, but it doesn't really matter, because like the vocal range is so great. It's got a ton of melody, it's got a ton of soul, and then he throws in, he's got some kind of Matt Bellamy or Tom York like falsettos going on that really just they work in the whole song.
I agree, and it's that driftiness of the vocals that just intertwine with everything else that's going on to a point where it's important, but it's not the focus. It's a piece of the greater whole, and I think that does 2 a.m. Orchestra a lot of service, especially with Loveless, because it encapsulates and wraps its arms around the big sound that they're reaching for and that they're achieving so well.
Yeah, and that the guitar and the bass kind of combining each other on the same riff kind of just really adds another layer of thickness to the song that just gives it's great. And, listening to this, it just reaffirms that I need to go to New Zealand, because the bands there, for whatever reason, like, they just seem to encapsulate some sort of soundtrack. They do a really good job of writing the soundtrack for my own life, like between them and the Naked and Famous, and I'll even throw the Flight of the Conchords in there, because there's a few of their songs that even get there as well. But whatever it is about the way that they write songs there, it just becomes a great background for whatever is going on in your life.
It's the Taika Waititi effect is what it is.
That's it.
He's responsible for it all. Either that or you're
Quick name another person from New Zealand.
the How to Be a Dad guy on that has those really awesome videos. I cannot remember. I don't know his name.
Ha ha ha! You fail.
I failed. Well, you named all the other bands.
All right.
The Hobbits. Bingo. Hobbits are from New Zealand.
The Hobbits, yes. The Hobbits are from New Zealand.
Frodo. He was in New Zealand once. Does that work? My credibility is like flying out the window right now because I can't name it.
Yeah. Just keep going there.
Keep talking, Greg. It'll help.
So with that, why don't you just go give 2 a.m. a listen, and go give Loveless lots of love.
2 a.m. Orchestra, Loveless, Auckland, New Zealand. Check them out. Coming back to a years ago familiar name, Storie Grubb.
What you gonna do about your solitary life? Did you think it through enough, or was this by design?
Wrote a review on Storie Grubb years ago. Had kind of a Tom Yorkian sense about the sound. Been following him personally for quite a while. He's here in Boise as well. Very DIY. But in 2019, Storie Grubb released The Void Struggle, of which has the song Solitary Life by Storie Grubb. No label backing Storie Grubb. It's always been this DIY approach to mixing, which you and I have heard quite often. The DIY doesn't always work. And sometimes in the nicest way possible. A lot of people that try and DIY or the jokingly live in my mom's basement making music on my laptop kind of thing, which, hey, if you're doing that, by all means keep making your music. Going to be onto something great, no doubt about it. I'm not trying to disparage that in any way, but a lot of times that DIY gets so tunnel vision that it's hard to break from that, and it almost creates a sound that just is too canned, and it's not really expanding within itself. Whereas Storie Grubb has always taken that DIY approach, but has such an artistic vision, both in the art that he does. His real name Sean. What he really does is art in life, but he also does his music. So he's doing artwork in a physical medium, but he also does his music. And he's referred to his music as the anti-folk, which is I found really interesting because it does have this folk undertone to it, but it's almost, I don't want to say it's that emo folk sense, but it is this very, it's viewing life through darker lenses than we would see in normal folk. And maybe that's where the emo folk comes in. But it is the anti-folk. It comes across kind of a violent femmes garage sound, I would say.
Yeah, I actually kind of got that vibe from it. The main thing that I kind of felt when I jumped into it was like, wow, this sounds almost like it got cut straight out of like the early 90s alternative sound. It's kind of it's got, a lot of those really bright tones behind, some sad reflections, and you think about kind of the message behind solitary life. And well, a lot of us are living a little bit of a solitary life right now. This is more about somebody who's observing someone who is kind of trying to be on their own and not around others, and trying to give them messages around of positivity around, like, you're beautiful and you deserve to be around people, and just kind of like it's kind of straddling the line of joy and sadness in a certain way, but it's got a lot of those I don't want to say jangly tones, because that's not right. Like, this isn't REM, but it's like it's got kind of that tragically hip kind of sound to it. Like, there's just that really that I know I'm not doing a great job of explaining this, which is what I should be doing, but just, kind of those tones that were present almost 30 years ago.
I think that...
Do you get what I mean?
Absolutely. I think that 90s reference, that alt early 90s sentiment is spot on with this. It was that very realistic approach to music and to songwriting that tried to fit this mold of, hey, this isn't all doom and gloom. And yes, in Solitary Life, he does sing, I'm dying inside thanks to this solitary life, but it's got this upbeat instrumental that reflects, as I'd pointed out, kind of through these dark lenses, but at the same time it sings to hopefulness, and that I'm not going to let it necessarily drag me entirely down, but this is just kind of who I am, and it's an honesty that I think pulls through. And vocally, Storie Grubb has a sound that is kind of reaches back into that 90s sound that was kind of making itself prevalent in the early 90s, that alt sound, but at the same time there's nothing like Storie Grubb's voice right now in modern music that I can think of off the top of my head. And that alone is not something worth just going, hey, I'm going to go buy all of his records. But there's a poeticness to it that I think that we're losing grasp on too much in the mainstream. I feel like there's an intellectual level that comes with the lyrics. So then as you're listening to Storie Grubb, it is like the artwork. It's like looking at a painting, and there's a beautiful picture that's made. And I guess for those who need a very quick reference, it's kind of like that scene in the Chicago Art Museum in Ferris Bueller when he's standing far back and you see the picnic in the park, and then he gets closer and closer and closer, and there's all those little dots. And I think that that's what Storie Grubb encapsulates, is that it's a great big picture that you can gloss over and you can listen to in the background, but at the same time, as you start to look at it a little deeper, as you start to listen to those nuances, I think that you're going to pick up on more to it than just the superficial image we're seeing.
All right, so if you love Georges Seurat paintings, you go check out Storie Grubb.
Or because I'm apparently just making reference to everybody being in part of everything else, Violent Femmes doing that painting, I don't know, something to that effect. It's got the flow to it, and the bounce to the song matches pace with that alt 90s, maybe even late 80s, as the alt sound was kind of growing. It kind of reaches into that, I think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you kind of touched on it earlier, but it definitely it captures the good part of DIY, which is the authentic kind of hopeful sound, whereas, I'm just going to leave it there.
Well, the only way that I could say it is, aside from the sentiment we've been giving to this, I think that I would encourage, I'm being definitive, I'm making a statement here. I would encourage you to just spend some time with Solitary Life by Storie Grubb, or even there's a plethora of releases by Storie Grubb, to just check it out, because each one has a little bit different personality to it, but it is that sound that will feel familiar to those that were here 30 years ago, might speak to those that weren't and that are trying to find something that speaks to them now. But overall, I think that Storie Grubb is a poet in a way that is not afraid to express what he's trying to say, but he's also in that DIY that works so well, meshing them together and making something that I like to listen to, that I think there's a lot more out there that would like to listen to as well.
All right, and so if that sounds like something that you want to listen to, then go grab Solitary Life by Storie Grubb.
You do circling. Start it.
Oh, okay. Is that all right? I didn't realize that's what you were trying to do there. I'm like, am
Sign
I
language.
what, like, did I drop my pen or something?
Don't go make tea, Clay.
All right. Well, let me just, since we're not on air.
That piece is not being. I shouldn't have talked over it.
Oh, so good. All right.
Someday we're gonna have
All right.
like the director's cut released.
Well, you know what? If you were smart, you would have just left all of this in.
Or will I?
You know what? We just talked about being authentic. What's more authentic than me sitting here and sipping on my tea?
At least you're not getting up to go make tea this time.
Matcha. Good stuff. It's got some cayenne in it. Perfect.
Did you still make the coffee with garlic in it?
I only did that like one time.
Oh, I thought that was like a thing.
Yes, it was a one-time
It
thing.
was a one-time thing.
Yeah. I did make coffee with butter for a while. That is actually pretty good. And you put it in, you do the bullet, so it really gets it all, like, you use butter instead of cream. And you use the bullet, the bullet with the button that makes the
You
spinning thing, and
keep saying bullet. That
just-
clearly
you-
conveys what you're
yeah.
going for.
you use the bullet, and it mixes all the butter into the coffee, and it's really, really good.
I just like coffee black.
Yeah. I got some tea up my nose. Oh!
Don't drink it through your nose.
All right.
Effervescent. Celestial nostrils.
Yep. I'm going to live forever.
Well, we're snorting tea, which is aptly the title of the second episode.
No, I've written down collecting pine cones as dark elves, social pine cone distancing, and Lemmy Jenkins.
Lemmy Jenkins. It's got to be until we get sued by someone named Lemmy Jenkins. We have no
All right,
money.
so Lemmy
Donate to Nanobot.
You don't like social pine cone distancing? I kind
I
of like
do
that
like
one.
social pine cone distancing. With Lemmy Jenkins.
All right, I'll come up with some creative way to put that in the post.
Hey, what are your thoughts on Porridge Radio, Clay?
This was an interesting sound. I kind of felt like it kept with the theme of where we are and the stuff that we're dealing with right now. Kind of like we talked about Storie, Grubb, solitary life you can take kind of a dotted line to the fact that we're all somewhat solitary and doing our social pinecone distancing. But with Circling by Porridge Radio, it's got an interesting feel to it because like you listen to the song and it's kind of got this like it's almost got like a carousel beat to it and like to kind of pull with that whole circling theme. But like the way that Dana Margolio talks about the themes of the song, it's like everything's on repetition because you're basically trying to tell yourself everything will be fine, and you're just doing it by repeating the same thing over and over again and just like basically mentally willing everything to be fine. And like the song says, like everything's fine, like that they just kind of say with relative frequency. But the theme of going down to the beach and getting into the water and the water washing away your emotions, but then they basically just come right back in, so everything is kind of just, as much as you're trying to release things, they're always coming back. So you're just kind of constantly reiterating this mantra that you're going to be able to change things. And this mantra just carries on. And like All I Am, like it builds another layer on top of itself as the song goes on and just escalates all of that emotion. And it felt tonally like it worked so well with this mixtape.
I'm doing well, I'm doing fine, we're all okay.
As you pointed out there, you referenced the carousel-like sound, that kind of calliope circular sound. It's almost a circusy undertone to it all. But the beginning of it, I guess the whole song really feels like that scene when Kevin Bacon in Animal House has his arms raised. Everything's okay. All is well. Remain calm. And he's screaming as the crowd's running towards him. It's almost as if he's thinking, just yell louder, and everything will be fine as he's getting trampled by the crowd. That's kind of what this song encapsulates. It's got the intro with those ambient waves and the birds, the synth underlay, kind of retro-y, almost Beatles sound in a way, the kind of that whimsical vibe that comes of it, and then the drums come crashing in, and then it builds on pace, and it just gets more and more amplified, and that sense of, no, we're okay. The more you yell it, apparently you're going to think it's going to get better. It feels like it's kind of akin to that, if you wake up and go for a walk early in the morning by yourself, the sun's coming out, not a lot of people out there, the world feels all right, it feels good, you feel refreshed, and everything feels just fantastic. You're alone, you feel alive, you've got your thoughts, you're feeling just right, but then your thoughts begin to manifest themselves into reality, and all of a sudden those thoughts aren't sunshine and butterflies, and you're going, oh, well, I've got this, and I live in this world that this is happening in, and by the end, you're basically, your thoughts are yelling inside of your head, and that's what I think that Circling really does. This song lays down a track to that feeling for me.
Yeah, I agree. And of course, I had this written down in my notes, and my handwriting is so terrible that I can't even read my own handwriting, but it's Dana Margolin, not Margolia, Margolin. And the way that her vocals come in, like, that's a great analogy of, kind of that early morning walk, and everything is just kind of like calm and level at the beginning, but the more that it goes along, like, the more frayed it becomes and the more raw it becomes, and like it's just one of the things I really appreciated about this track was just the emotional rawness of it all.
To your point of the carousel, we've talked a lot here about how things build, how they build on themselves, in themselves, and things like that as we've been talking about all these different tracks. And I think Circling, it builds within itself and builds and builds and builds, but it's constrained to that carousel reference of this calliope that's spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning, and you're supposed to be having fun. Can't you hear the music? It's fun. And then it becomes kind of that Charlie and the Chocolate Factory tunnel scene where we keep rowing and things keep building, and all of a sudden I'm terrified with my own thoughts, but it is almost comforting that you're not the only one thinking that. And this song allows you to understand that you're not the only one thinking that. It's natural, but they capture that so well with Circling.
Yeah, and that's the great thing about music. It brings us all together. So don't take our word for it. Go check out Circling by Porridge Radio.
So thank you all for listening and hanging out with us. We know that a lot of people are at home, and we encourage you all, as we had talked about, to go out, check out that music, call your record shop, experience the new music. Now is a perfect time. If you got some time, a laptop, a phone, some headphones, jump on and try something new. Try any of the artists that we talked about today, and we'll be back soon with more artists to chat about and more songs. Highly encourage you to check it out. Keep supporting independent and local music.
All right, sounds good. You ready to call it a day?
Let's call it a day. We'll see you next time.
All right, thanks, Fred.